Welcome to The Haunting Whispers of the Past, a spine-chilling journey through eerie encounters, dark visions, and the unsettling grip of the unknown. Join us as we explore the terrifying experiences of those who have faced the unimaginable and lived to share their stories. The Farmhouse's hidden horror. In 2005, Alice resided in a secluded farmhouse, caring for her elderly grandmother, Elena. Surrounded by expansive fields and dense woods, the farmhouse had always been a sanctuary of tranquility. However, one fateful afternoon, that peace was violently shattered. Alice was jolted awake from a nap by a blood-curdling scream echoing through the old house. Disoriented and alarmed, she dashed to her grandmother's room, her heart racing. Bursting through the door, she discovered Elena, a frail woman in her late 80s, trembling under the sheets, shivering like a frightened child. "Grandma, what happened?" Alice asked urgently, gently shaking her grandmother in an attempt to snap her back to reality. Elena's eyes were wide with terror, her body shaking uncontrollably. "It was him," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "He was standing by the door, watching me. It was Satan himself." Alice froze, a shiver running down her spine. Elena, always sharp and coherent, had never experienced hallucinations. Yet, here she was, insisting that the menacing red figure she had seen was real. The terror in her eyes was palpable, and Alice couldn't shake the feeling that something malevolent had entered their home. Faces in the darkness. In another town, 67-year-old Margaret, a retired teacher, was battling her own horrifying ordeal. It began innocuously, a fleeting shadow seen out of the corner of her eye. But soon, these shadows evolved into something far more sinister. One evening, alone in her living room, Margaret saw them, faces, twisted and grotesque, floating around her. They had crooked teeth, bulging eyes, and ears that stretched unnaturally. Their elongated faces seemed to leer at her, their silent laughter echoing in her mind. Desperate for answers, Margaret sought medical help, but extensive tests revealed no physical cause for her hallucinations. Her family, frightened and perplexed, even consulted a priest about performing an exorcism. Margaret sensed, deep down, that these faces were more than mere figments of her imagination. Diagnosed with Charles Bonnet syndrome, a condition causing vivid visual hallucinations, Margaret struggled to believe that these faces were just hallucinations. The final farewell. In 1995, Robert was grieving the recent death of his mother from cancer. Overwhelmed with sorrow, he isolated himself in his bedroom, the weight of his grief pressing down on him. One night, unable to sleep, he heard it, the creaking of the wooden floor as if someone was approaching him. His heart raced, breath catching in his throat. And then he saw her. In the doorway stood his mother, illuminated by the dim hallway light. She appeared just as she had before the illness took its toll, healthy and vibrant. Yet, something was amiss, a coldness in her eyes that made Robert's blood run cold. He screamed, a sound so piercing that neighbors called the police. When authorities arrived, Robert recounted his experience, his voice trembling. Despite thorough medical evaluations, no explanation was found for his vision. Since that night, Robert has never seen his mother's apparition again, but the memory continues to haunt him. The closet intruder. My own unsettling experience still sends chills down my spine. As a child, living with my single mother, Sarah, I felt secure knowing she checked on me each night when she got up to use the bathroom. One night, I woke to rustling sounds coming from my closet. Groggy and disoriented, I saw my mom standing at the foot of my bed, giving me a playful wave. "Go back to sleep," she said soothingly. I watched as she moved to the closet, leaving the door slightly ajar, and peered through the crack with a mischievous glint in her eye. I laughed, comforted, and fell back asleep. The next morning, I asked my mom why she had been hiding in the closet. Her face went pale as she looked at me, puzzled and concerned. "I wasn't in your room last night," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "We checked the house, but no sign of an intruder was found." My mom concluded it must have been a dream or hallucination. But to this day, I can't shake the feeling that something, or someone, was watching me from that closet. The midnight apparition. As a truck driver, I've faced many late-night journeys, often relying on coffee to stay awake. However, on one particular night, I had none. It was a struggle to stay alert, and I almost dozed off several times, only jolted awake by the truck drifting off the road. Just as I thought I was regaining control, I saw it, a dark figure standing in the middle of the road. I swerved to avoid it, narrowly missing it by inches. Heart racing, I pulled over to compose myself. But when I checked the rearview mirror, the figure remained motionless in the darkness. Typically, I avoid confrontations, but something compelled me to get out and investigate. I stepped out into the cold night air, but when I looked around, there was no one. The road stretched out empty into the darkness. Shaken, I returned to the truck and drove on, pulling over a few miles later to sleep. That night, my mind conjured a figure so terrifying that it haunts my nightmares. The shadowy figure. At 13, I was a heavy sleeper with no trouble falling asleep. But one Saturday morning, after staying up late, I woke, or thought I did, completely paralyzed. I could only move my eyes, and when I focused on the room's corner, I saw something that still terrifies me. There, in the shadows, stood a man, around 8 feet tall, with a gaping mouth dripping with blood. He smiled at me with a cruel, twisted grin, holding a large carving knife. My worst fear materialized as he glided toward me, not walking, just hovering like a ghost. Paralyzed with fear, unable to scream or move, I watched as he reached the edge of my bed and lifted the knife. I closed my eyes, bracing for the worst. When I finally opened them, he was gone. I could move again. I rushed to tell my parents, who explained I had experienced sleep paralysis. But the fear I felt was real, and his face remains vividly etched in my memory. A mother's sixth sense. As a single mother working 2 jobs, I often had to hire a sitter for my 3-year-old son, Ethan. The long drive home from my second job was exhausting, and a few times, I nearly fell asleep at the wheel. One night, struggling to stay awake, I pinched myself and shook my head. The highway was pitch dark, making it harder to keep my eyes open. Suddenly, I heard giggling from the back seat. I glanced in the rearview mirror and saw Ethan, sitting in his car seat, smiling at me. I slammed on the brakes, but when I turned around, the back seat was empty. My heart raced as I tried to make sense of what I saw. Moments later, the sitter called to say Ethan had fallen down the stairs and broken his ankle. Wide awake now, I sped home as fast as I could. To this day, I believe that a mother's intuition transcends distance and time, a bond that warns us of our children's needs. The forest's ominous presence. My first encounter occurred while living in a rural area surrounded by dense woods. Despite having neighbors nearby, the thick trees created an eerie sense of isolation. One late night, alone at home, I heard a piercing scream emanating from the woods. Grabbing a flashlight, I ventured into the backyard, my heart pounding. It was late, and all the lights in the neighboring houses were off. As I illuminated the trees, my light fell upon a figure, a tall, grotesque entity, at least twice my height, with a long, trunk-like appendage hanging from its face to its waist, resembling an elephant. The figure moved slowly toward me, its ominous presence filling the night with an unsettling chill. As we close the chapter on the haunting whispers of the past, we leave behind a world where shadows dance and the unknown grips tightly. These chilling tales remind us of the thin veil between our world and the mysteries that lurk just beyond our understanding. Whether you find comfort in the light or solace in the darkness, one thing is clear. The past has a way of haunting us, leaving whispers that linger long after the story ends. Thank you for joining us on this eerie journey through fear and the supernatural. If these tales have left you with chills or questions, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more unsettling stories and spine-tingling experiences. Until next time, keep your lights on and your mind open, for the echoes of the past are never too far behind. Thank you for tuning in to Horror Echo. We hope these chilling tales have sent shivers down your spine and left you questioning what lurks in the shadows. If you enjoyed our dive into the unknown and want more stories that echo through the dark corners of fear, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell.